Thank you for granting us another opportunity to come into your home on MCTV via Camera Mosaic with your host, Jean-Claude Sano. Today it is another pleasure for me to be able to bring another guest to you, someone that you're going to be delighted to hear more about. And sometimes if you see the man walking on the street, you would never think that he's engaged into so much and so many things. Looks like a very quiet individual, but however, inside of this head, there's so much knowledge, not only about financial, but also about political as well, because he had really faces a lot to get to where he's at, and he's about to at least to render back to his community the bulk of knowledge that he has. With no further ado, I'll introduce you to David Harris Jr. How are you, sir?
Good to meet you. Good to see you.
Mr. David is certainly a good friend of somebody that you all have seen here before on this television program, which is the former Senator Bill Owens. But he has some history of his own also, which I'd like for him to at least share with us eventually. And we'll also be getting into the future involvement of what is taking place here in Randolph that we are very interested in, because Randolph has turned out to be a very diverse community lately. And I think that if the people really get organized, there's so much that they can do. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. Mr. Davis, would you please do us the formal introductions of yourself to the general audience of MCTV?
My pleasure. As I said, my name is David Harris Jr. I'm born and raised in Brockton. And I moved to Randolph back in 1966. And I've been living here ever since. It was quite a trick of fate that brought me to Randolph in the first place. Getting married as a young man, looking for a place to settle. My wife and I decided that Randolph was a place we'd like to settle. We anticipated coming here as a quiet couple to raise a family and live a quiet, peaceful life. But fortunately, it hasn't worked out that way. I believe that fate sometimes can interrupt your life and change direction and can put you in a different place.
Sure.
And when I first came to Randolph, the population of color was less than 1%. And I had the great fortune of attempting to buy a house and running into discrimination. And I say it's a great fortune because if I had not run into housing discrimination, I probably would never have gotten involved in politics or community action, civil rights, or any of these activities that I've been involved in over the past 40-some years. When I first came to Randolph and attempting to buy a house, I ran into a process called steering, in which real estate brokers will steer you to only certain houses, certain streets in the community where other black people lived. And
in other words, there was some specific neighborhood where
yes,
they would not even dare taking you
wouldn't,
to.
you'd never see.
Right.
You'd
Not
never
unless there are people that looks like you.
Right, right.
These were the neighborhoods they wanted to be at. Okay.
Right, right. And I got a phone call from an individual I had never heard of before, a lady by the name of Olga Lycan, and she belonged to a fair housing organization that was, at that time, they were attempting to integrate the town of Randolph with people from surrounding cities and communities. And she indicated to me that they had discovered a individual who was willing, a white individual who was willing to sell their house to a black person. And when I take a look at it, And I took a look at it, and it's a house I never would have seen through a real estate broker. They had this connection, network connection, in which they were identifying people, Caucasian people who were willing to sell their homes to people of color. And I saw it, and it was exactly what I was looking for. And I bought the house, and I live there today, 40-some years later. But that kind of got me involved in working with that organization, which was called Randolph Fair Housing at the time. And I became I got involved with the housing subdivision subcommittee, and I eventually became the chairman of the subcommittee, and then eventually became the chairman of the organization over a period. And for the 35 years, I was the chair. And during that period of time, we mounted an aggressive campaign to desegregate the community of Randolph. We did work very closely with the MCAD. We did testing. We filed lawsuits against real estate brokers. We did all types of demonstrations and et cetera. And over a period of time, we were able to break down and eliminate housing discrimination. And when it became known that in Randolph you couldn't get away with discriminating against people of color who were seeking apartments or houses, the floodgates started opened up, and people felt comfortable that they could come to Randolph, look for a home, look for an apartment, and move in without being hassled. And eventually the community the diversity began to increase, and over a period of time, right now it is the most diverse community in the entire state. I think it's 65 to 70% of the community are people of color. And the great thing about it is that it isn't a town where you have a neighborhood of Vietnamese, a neighborhood of Haitians, a neighborhood of African Americans. It's a community where every street has every nationality you can think of. And I think there are over 15 languages spoken in the community, and it's a very unique community in its diversity. We've made tremendous progress as far as integrating the community. The school system right now, the student body is 85 to 90% kids of color, and we've been able to create some political action groups in the community. Right now we have a organization called Randolph Community Action Network, which is primarily objective is to try to engage the community in the civic activities in the community. We want more people of color to get involved in running for office. We want to increase the voter participation of people of color. We want more people of color to serve on boards and commissions in the community. So what we do is we try to reach out to the community and to create a database of people of color, and then try to keep them informed of what's going on in the community. And right now, we've made pretty good progress in that area. We have, right now, we look at the school committee. The school committee now is predominantly elected people of color. We've been able to sponsor candidates, organize their campaigns, solicit workers and campaign actions to help them become elected.
Now, before we go any further, this is the part that we're really going to be ending with, so I'd like to concentrate a little bit on it because I think it's very crucial and detrimental so that the folks who are listening to this program will get a sense of what they need to do to engage and continue that progress. Well, thank you for being the father of this whole movement of desegregations here in Randolph. And as far as there are so many newcomers who would not have known that Mr. David Harris Jr. had been involved into this whole project in 1966. So we got to know what our forefathers have done, and luckily that forefather is still there and alive and strong and vibrant. So I think that would help disseminate the information, and people will really appreciate what is going on. But before we move on into this aspect, so for folks who doesn't really know, throughout the state, though, actually, wherever there was a state that had a bulk majority of Caucasians, before anybody would entering into these neighborhoods, there's always been this issue of, should I say, real estate agents who's trying to steer people into certain area before they could move into others. So that breaking this barrier to me was very strong. However, you have also broken other barriers in your life, and the whole history of Sombra. Somba, is that what you call it?
Somba.
Somba. I'd like for you to tell us a bit about it, because I think a lot of folks are now enjoying this whole entire activities, this all benefits, but they didn't know who was the forefather who had really started it from scratch.
Okay. As they say, fate can move your life in directions that you never anticipated. And I was very fortunate that I had a friend who worked in state government who one day told me that there was an opening for a position in government to head up an agency. I was at the time, I was an executive in the private sector, and had never had any experience working in government. So I sent my resume in and just did it as a perfunctory thing, never expecting any results from it, but there again, fate stepped in, and I was asked to come in for an interview. I came in for an interview, and I was interviewed by the entire Black Caucus at the State House. Evidently, this position was deemed to be a very critical one, so they wanted the entire Black Caucus involved in selecting the individual to head up this agency.
And we're talking about what year at that time?
This is 1973.
We're in the
1973.
Okay.
So I did the interview and then went home and just forgot about it and figured, hey, well, you know, it was just an experience. And then I got a call 2 weeks later offering me the position, and I accepted the position. But little did I know that when I accepted the position, that it was an agency that was defunct, had no funds. It originally was federally funded, and the funds had been withdrawn because of lack of productivity. So I found myself sitting sitting in an office with a chair and a table, a chair, a desk, and a phone, not even a secretary. So I had a choice at that point. I could either say, well, this is really not what I think I thought it was going to be and walk away, or I could stay and take a chance and see what I could do. So basically, I was told that I could do anything I wanted. I could create any kind of a program that I wanted to create. So the first thing we had to do was to reactivate the federal funding. We got that reactivated, and then I had the opportunity to write all the job descriptions, write all the programs, and to create the entire agency from scratch in any way I wanted to put it together. And I had previously owned a business, a small business, so it gave me a little bit of an idea of what type of a program I wanted to put together that would have an impact on particularly small businesses. So I was able to take that little seed and develop it into an agency. We had about 13, 14 people within a year or two, and we wrote our own legislation to become part of the state government, and we got a line item, and we were able to develop the first set-aside programs for minority businesses in the country. We were able to write all the guidelines and regulations for certification, and we were able to establish major relationships with many federal agencies, particularly in the area of procurement. And I was very fortunate to have been promoted to deputy commissioner within the Commerce Department and heading up the State Office of Minority Business Assistance, which still exists today, 40-some years later, 40 years later, as an agency within state government. I think it's probably the first time that any agency had been created from scratch and being able to be developed and have a permanency within state government. And during the time I was there, we were able to develop over $2 billion worth of contract opportunities with government agencies for minority businesses. And we expanded it to cover women and other disadvantaged businesses. And the agency exists today as an agency within the purchasing department as a arm of the purchasing division. So it was a very, very rewarding experience for me. I worked under 4 different governors. I started with, I was Governor Sargent, I worked under Governor King, and under 2 administrations of Governor Dukakis. And many of the programs that we developed were adopted nationwide and are still in place. The certification program that we put together was adopted nationwide and is the model that most states use when they're determining the legitimacy of a disadvantaged business. So it was an extreme pleasure for me to have had that opportunity to do that type of innovative program within the state of Massachusetts and have it still functioning today, many, many years later.
Thank you for the education, and certainly it's a very ambitious task that you have undertaken, because very easily you could have walked out. It would have been the easiest thing to do, especially when you own your own business. But I think the guts to create something like this, I think Massachusetts owes you honor. And the small minority businesses who are enjoying the privilege, the fruits of your hard labor, should certainly recognize you for what you have done. A diverse community right now is in your hand. As you said, the number are staggering when we're looking at least very big populations of students. And I would say the bulk majority of them happens to be Haitians here in Randolph. Similar to in Boston, you know, out of every 10 students, 4 of them happens to be Haitians. And I think Randolph is into the same shoes. I could remember years ago, me and a friend of mine by the name of Dr. Eustache Jean-Louis, who at the time I resided in Randolph and was very concerned about receivership of the education system here in Randolph. It was ready to be turned over. We talked on the phone because we were very concerned, because there was a lot of Haitian kids coming into the town and they were all getting into the school system. So, you know, as far as community leaders, we were concerned what would be there for them as far as their future is concerned. How has it been ever since that the school department have turned out to be a majority of let's say people of color really running it at the moment, which is great in comparison to Boston. The mayor ended up nominating the people, but whereas here it's get elected, right? Yes,
they're elected individually right now it's every 2 years. They're all elected at once. And it's been a very interesting transformation in that even though we had a population which was majority minority, the school committee up until a year ago was majority Caucasian. And we had a black Hispanic individual as a superintendent, and there was actually institutional racism within the school committee itself. And that was a very trying, stressful period of time where you have a majority population that's minority, you have a majority student body which is minority, and then you had a school committee which was majority non-minority, and they were very obstructionist, and there was institutional racism within the school committee itself. And it was so bad that the superintendent served 1 term and then decided he wasn't going to stay any further. So our organization, Randolph Community Action Network, has really worked very hard to change the dynamics and to diversify the school committee. And right now, we have great hope going forward that we have a majority-minority school committee, and we have some talented people on that school board. And we have just hired a African-American superintendent from Washington, D.C. And that never would have happened if the school committee had not been focused on what's in the best interest of the kids. And he was clearly the best candidate. And he is took his position in July. And he, so far, I've heard nothing but good reports. And I think the community, the success of the school system has to be a joint effort between the community working hand in hand with the school system and supporting the administration, because we've had such negativity over the past 7 years that it's sort of caused a lot of people to withdraw their kids from the school system. The performance has declined to a level 4, and the superintendent previous superintendent, who was a very talented young man, was stifled in his effort to change the dynamics. He had put in place a turnaround plan, which is now being moved forward. The obstructionist people on the school board are gone, and we have a school committee that's working in concert as a partnership with the new superintendent. Because for a school system to be successful, you have to have the school committee working as a team in concert in a partnership with the superintendent as a team working for the best interest of the kids. So I think going forward, I see great hope, and I think that this Randolph school system is going to turn around and be one of the better school systems in the state. Mm-hmm. So I think I would encourage people who are thinking about the future of keeping their kids in Randolph. I would encourage them to keep the kids in Randolph school system and get involved in the PTOs and also the site-based councils, and attend meetings and go to school committee meetings, make their voices heard, and be integral part of the whole process. Because if we're going to be a first-class school system in Randolph, it's going to take a joint cooperation between the entire community working in the best interest of the kids.
And it always takes a village, certainly, to make it successful. Right. 3 elements before we get back to the association itself, or the network of Randolph, and its adventure thoughts and movement that will be taking place. You've seen what happened in Ferguson.
Right.
Normally, when you have a majority that is being suppressed, or oppressed, should I say, it causes a lot of tension. Police department not reflecting the community. Fire department is not reflecting the community. And neither are the local government positions reflecting the community. How are you guys fighting with this so that we don't fall into the same pattern here?
Well, we've got some issues that we're dealing with. We have some concerns. We have a town council which doesn't reflect the diversity of the community. That's one issue that we're trying to deal with. We're trying to encourage more people of color to get involved as candidates running for office. We have a police department that has we feel is not as sensitive to the needs of the people, this diversity. And we've had a number of issues and complaints about police officers not respecting people of color in the town. So we, even though we've made great progress, we still have a ways to go. I think Randolph is similar to Ferguson in some ways, in that the police department, even though it is more diverse than Ferguson, it still has not reached where it should be as far as its diversity is concerned.
Especially based on the population.
Based on the population,
right.
Based on the population. We feel that, it's my opinion, that until the police department reaches the diversity that represents the the demographics of the community, then we're still going to have these issues. We have rogue police officers who disrespect people of color, and I think the main cause of that is because accountability is lacking. I mean, if a police officer disrespects a citizen, and they know that if a complaint is filed against them, and nothing's going to happen, because the internal affairs is headed up by police officers, and if you file a complaint with the police department, most of the time it's just going to never see the light of day. So I think until there is some kind of a civilian review board or a civilian involvement in the internal affairs of police departments, that's nationwide, we're really never going to really solve that problem, where you have rogue officers disrespecting people of color. You have things happening that happened in Ferguson where a young man is shot dead in the street. And you're just going to have those kinds of incidents happening until you really are able to hold people accountable. Now, it's not saying that most police officers do their job and they're respectful and they do the right thing. But if you've got a handful or a couple of handfuls of rogue officers who just don't respect people, then you're still going to have this compounded problem that's going to go on and on and on. So I think one of the ways to solve that is to get civilians involved in the complaint process, whether it's via civilian review board or something of that nature. Because if the police officer on the street knows that if he conducts an act that is disrespectful, or a complaint is going to be filed against them, he or she, that they're going to be held accountable for it. But right now, there is very little accountability because it's all internal.
Prevention is certainly the best medicine, and you have proven the fact that it has worked. It has worked for the housing industry, for the renters and the people who are buying. I think the next step is certainly to make sure that we consolidate the issue of the continuation of discriminations to disappear or to diminish completely for the next generations to come. And I think that will be a great legacy for you to leave behind. I have heard so many complaints when I'm in Boston in regards to the attitude, the behavior, the police office or the police department here in Randolph. And the ringtone came all the way down to Boston, so it tells us of the proper behavior of folks traveling from Boston, especially heading down toward Brockton. And if it just happens to enter into these cities also, into these towns, and you're a black person, it's the first time that you have seen, you become a target automatically. I could remember my days when I first entered Milton. That had also some similarities. I know it's similar to all of these towns. Things like this happens, and I'm hoping that throughout the country, Ferguson will continue carrying the torch so that we can change the whole United States with this whole movement, because the unfairness, the misbehavior, the tolerance by some of the hierarchy to allow this thing to continue happens in the United States, it's a crime to the world. And I think we should continue shouting it to the top of our lungs to really make that change, because that change needs to be taking place.
I might say one thing, if I might say.
Sure.
Under the previous police chief, we made great progress in that we had a group of people who formed a team to work with his administration to put together we call it a memorandum of agreement, in which we spelled out 18 actions by the police department that would improve the relationship between the police department and the community. Unfortunately, the MOU has not been fully implemented. My feeling is if it ever is fully implemented, that the whole culture of this Randolph department will change. And it starts with the leadership. We feel that, my own opinion is that unless you have a police chief who is totally committed to changing the culture, then it's not going to happen. Fortunately, we had a police chief prior that was willing to listen and sit down and begin to work towards that entity. Until he retired, he was working very closely with us. So I think that we have the great potential if we're able to implement the actions that we feel that would make the difference and make this police department what it should be.
Now, let's close with one thing, because when I'm speaking with you, or I'm speaking with Bill, or I'm speaking with those of you who have gone ahead, and there is so much. I could listen to you guys for hours and hours, and I think the next generation needs to do the same, because I do believe this is where the connection needs to be made so that we can save our future. The organization that you had mentioned, how could people get involved in it? What are you guys doing throughout this whole elections, which is effective on Tuesday, September the 9th? And after the election, there will certainly, the primary is over, there will be a general elections. What are you guys are doing? What can people do to get involved, to participate? Where you guys are located? How can they get in touch with? Because I definitely know that there are quite a few viewers out there who would be interested and who wants to get involved after they hear this message.
Well, I think one thing they could do is simply contact me. I'd be happy to give them my phone number. My phone number is 781-961-2422, and they could even send me an email, and my email address is David, small letters, H's and Harry, 33@verizon.net. And what we're attempting to do is to, number one, register voters, more voters. Would like to get you into our data bank so we can keep you informed of what is happening in the community, when there are problems or activities or meetings that you should attend, who the candidates are that are running for office, particularly locally, and what are the issues that are pertinent that you need to speak up about. So we just have a tremendous amount of information because we're working very closely with some of our representatives that are elected officials, and we have a lot of information that people can get. And also, if anyone has a problem, they can contact us, and we'd be more than happy to intervene, to help them, guide them into solutions of whether it's a problem with the police department or it's a problem with an issue in the community or whatever it might be. Randolph Community Action Network is very willing to help. But I think one of the main factors is that in the local elections, where it really makes a big difference, we have very few people turn out to vote. And that's the major critical problem we have, is that the majority of people of color in Randolph do not vote in local elections. There are 23,000 registered voters, and on a local election, we probably get 4,000 people out to vote, which is really tragic. And we feel that if people of color came out, just 1,200 people of color came out, in addition to the numbers that we have now, that we could actually change the electoral dynamics in the community. Because there's a tremendous sleeping elephant out there that has not come forth. And I would say if you come forth and get involved, you can really have a major impact on this community. And we would invite you to become part of our organization, become a part of our effort. And I think together we can really make a tremendous difference in this community. But it's going to take you coming forth and getting involved, getting into the network, and really stepping forward and particularly voting at the elections, paying attention to who the candidates are. We will be looking at the next election, which will be next year, and we're going to be sponsoring candidates of color, talented candidates of color, and we would like to get your support because we feel that if we can get the support of a community of color, that we can really make this change in the dynamics and the diversity of our representatives.
And the information are being disseminated through these people. So if they're really going to get involved,
well, we're going to have forums, education. We have forums and workshops, in which we try to get people, to learn more about how this town functions. If we have the email address, we'll be sending out emails on a regular basis, informing them of what's going on in the community, who the candidates are, what issues they should be responding to. And just getting into the information stream. We have many boards and commissions in town. who go many vacancies because people don't come forth to participate and serve on these boards. And these boards actually run the government, they run the community. So there are openings on these boards, and we'd love to have people volunteer to serve on these commissions and boards. And there are many opportunities to have a role and a say in how this community functions. And it's very critical that we get more people to step forward, particularly people of color to step forward and get involved.
We'll be here right next to you and trying to at least canalize the informations to the public in Randolph so that it can really come and step out and be a part of this. We are very proud for what you have done thus far. And in closing, we're going to certainly give them a wrap-up in Haitian Creole so they'll get the drift of all the information that's taking place in here. We want to thank you so very much. All the contacts with Mr. David Harris is 781-961-2422. Email address is David, D-A-V-I-D-H, number is 33, you said, at earthlink.net?
Or Verizon.net.
Or Verizon.net. I have no words for you, but simply thank you, because such nourishing information is detrimental to the livelihood of these populations. And by them getting to understand, to hear all of this, I am hoping that no matter the amount of minds that we have changed to really get involved, it will be very crucial to the future of Randolph. Thank you for all the work that you have done, the work that you continue to do, and we're going to be by your side. And if no one has ever given you the greatest award on this planet, know for sure that it's heavenly being awaiting for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Right. Thanks.